Hey there, what's up? My name's Ryan. In this video, we're going to the board game Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is a spin-off of a really popular game called Seven Wonders. They both focus on card drafting, but other than that, they're pretty different. So if you don't know how it works, I'm going to start the video out with a short explanation of the rules so the review makes a little more sense. Of course, if you already know how to play the game, use the chapters below and skip ahead to the review. Okay, so here's the game all set up for the first stage. This is not going to be a complete how to play tutorial, but at least give you to kind of see how the game works. On your turn, players may draft any of the available cards. An available card is basically one that is showing that is not covered at all by other cards. So these first 6 cards here are all available at the beginning of the game. Now these are actually all supposed to be dealt randomly. I chose out one of each color so I can kind of talk about what each color does. As you see later in the game, the cards all come in one of these 6 colors. The blue cards simply give you victory points at the end of the game. This red card has a shield, which tells you how many spaces you're supposed to move this red military token in the direction of your opponent. If you're ever able to move to the very end of the track, you immediately win the game. The brown cards are basic resource cards. In this example, stone. This provides you 1 stone for the rest of the game. As you can see, some of the cards have a cost here. For example, this card costs a wood. This card here later in the game costs a wood and a stone. So by having that stone in your hand, you don't have to pay the stone cost on cards that cost 1 stone. The gray card's the exact same idea. This is glass here. Same idea as the brown cards. When things cost glass, like this green card right here, you won't have to pay that cost if you have that card. Now there's a wide variety of gold cards. They're special. They help you make money in the game, but they also give you a special perk. In this example, clay will always cost you 1 to buy for the rest of the game. These are pretty powerful. Now the green cards are completely different. They will give you a symbol here. If you can ever match 2 of these symbols throughout the game, so you get a green card, you put in your city, later on you get another green card, you will get to pick one of these scientific tokens up here. Now these scientific tokens will give you really powerful perks. We're not going to go over in this video here, but that's what these green cards do right there. Also, if you're ever able to collect enough different scientific tokens, just like the military that ends the game right away, enough scientific tokens, your civilization becomes way more advanced than the other civilization and you immediately win. So in our example here, this player could take this stone for free, put it in their city. The second player could take this glass here. Now it costs 1 coin, so he spends 1 coin. Now this card is now face down, but no cards are on top of it. So just like you would in the game of solitaire or some old card games, you flip this over and now revealing it to the next player. Now if this player would like this card, it costs 3, so they spend 3 and take this card. You notice that underneath this card, these cards do not get flipped since they're still partially covered by the cards on top of them. So let's say this player takes this card, spends 3 for it, and now flips this card over. You keep going like this, back and forth, until you get to the end of the round. A few things to note. The cards have costs that the resources help cover, but just know if you don't have the resources, you can pay with them with money, but they become more expensive if your opponent owns the resource that you're paying for it. Now the game is called Seven Wonders for a reason. Each player will have 4 of these wonder cards in front of them. These all give them an extremely powerful bonus if they were to build them on their turn. So instead of selecting a card from the middle to build in their city, they can also choose to build one of their wonders on their turn. And the final thing you can do in your turn is you're allowed to discard a card for money. Play continues back and forth like this until the final card of the round is taken. In this example, let's say this player takes that card. That's into the first stage, and you'll now deal out age 2 cards. I'm not going to do all of them, but you can tell that age 2 cards have even more costs associated with them, but your cities are bigger, so you can afford more at this point. They also tend to have more powerful moves like 2 shields, 4 victory points, 2 wood. Now after you've played through 3 total phases and the final card of phase 3 is taken, the game is over and you add up points. You add the total number of victory points you see on blue cards, on green cards, also any wonders which are currently off the screen. You also get victory points from your red military marker, could give you points for being closer and closer down this track. And also scientific tokens you picked up can provide victory points. But like I said earlier, it's also completely possible for this game to end early. For example, if this player bought this card, 1, 2, 3 shields, 1, 2, 3, game is over right now. You don't add up score, nothing else matters, this player has now won. Or if one player collects enough different scientific symbols, they can also immediately end the game and win right away. Alright, so that's how it works. Let's jump right into some positives. First of all, Seven Wonders Duel gives you so many good decisions on almost every turn. There aren't a lot of just clear cut, yeah, you get this card. There are some cards you really want, but you realize if you take that card, you're going to reveal a card for your opponent that they might really want, or maybe you'll reveal a random card and you're not willing to take that risk of revealing a card to your opponent that's random. Another thing that's great about the game is there's 3 different ways to win. You can win by having the most victory points at the end, kind of the economic victory. You can have the most science. You can win immediately by science, or you can win immediately by military. Having those 3 tracks of victory makes the game so interesting. They did a good job of balancing the 3. Like, they actually have 3 different legitimate ways you can play the game and try to win. And really the best plays of the game, when you're good at it, as you go through, you're evaluating all 3 of those and seeing which one you have the best shot at as the game progresses. And they were able to take these ideas, the great decisions on every turn, 3 different paths for victory, and then somehow fit the game into less than an hour. Most plays of this game are going to be 40 to 60 minutes long. So great decision, great thinking, very strategic, but in a very short amount of time. Alright, so I'll get to a few more things I like here in just a second. I'm going to take a quick break and look at some flaws. Now, I don't like using the flaw unless there's a clear component issue or a problem with the game's mechanics that kind of break it. Now, before I say this, I only have one thing about Seven Wonders Duel. Before I say it, let me preface it with this. I've played Seven Wonders Duel more than any other board game. I probably have close to 100 plays of this game, so I know it really well. Clearly, I like it a lot. I haven't said that yet, but I like it a lot if I've played it close to 100 times. I have just noticed a recurring issue where there is a pretty big first player advantage. I should say small, but it feels big, especially when you're the second player. And the first player, if they're careful, can kind of dictate how all the cards get drafted in the first age. And by doing that, they get first dibs on a lot of cards. Now, to kind of give you the answer to that flaw, that's why the 3 paths to victory are really nice. As a second player, you have to be very careful, because if you notice the first player starts getting ahead on, let's say, the economy, they start producing more resources than you have to really quickly pivot to a secondary strategy, because they can run away with the game if you're not careful with that. Because again, that first player advantage of being able to really, if they play it right, really kind of control how the cards are drafted throughout that first stage. Alright, so now to a few things I just like about the game preference-wise. I have played the game close to 100 times, and I would still play it right now. I think it's a great game. It's not too complicated, but it has fairly deep strategy, meaning that when you open the game, look at the rules, you think, okay, your first few plays of it, you already feel pretty confident with how it works. It's not an insanely complicated game, but there's enough strategy that you can play it again, and you keep discovering new ways to kind of get to the end, new paths to victory. Okay, so a quick example of how this plays out. Let's say on your turn, you want to build a wonder to give you some victory points and resource production. But then you look out there, you also see there's a blue card that would give you those victory points as well. But you could also throw away a card because you might need money to buy a military card on your next turn. But then when you play the game enough, you might realize the real best move is to just buy another stone, because you already have a lot of stone, and by buying that stone, you're going to price your opponent out on all of his buildings and wonders that use stone. So you might think, this is the best move, this is the best move, this is the best move. Then once you really get into it, you realize, no, the real best move might be completely different than all those moves. So basically what I'm getting at is the game is extremely replayable. Like, I played the game about 10 times originally, and I thought, okay, one big flaw of the game is that once one player gets ahead of the economy, there's really no way to come back, especially if a player is able to get a gold card. Then the other player takes their turn, flips over a card, it's another gold card. Gold cards are really nice for the economy, so they take that. Then the other player takes a turn, and they accidentally flip over, of course it's random, they flip over a gold card. And the same player gets 3 gold cards early on in the game. I used to think, no, there's no way to beat them, because at the end of the game, the economy is going to play out, they're going to have more victory points. But now that I've played a lot, I realize how much strategy there is. If you see that player get a gold card, I might just buy a scientific card, just because I think, well, you know, I'm just going just in case it happens. Let's say then you flip over a gold card and a scientific card. Me and my first 10 playthroughs would have been like, cool, another gold card. Well, now I know if you take that other gold card and the other player, their first 2 cards in the game are 2 green cards, their odds of winning by science are so high, it's going to be really hard. You don't win by victory points until the end of the game. The science ends the game right away. So you have to like really dig in and see that, you know, it's not always just drive someone to the ground with the economy. There's a lot of other legitimate ways to win the game. Okay, so I do have one thing to add, and just to preference this thing I don't like. There are guild cards in the game, and the guild cards are basically the equivalent of like Double Jeopardy or like Family Feud at the end, where they double the points. So really anyone could still win at the end of the game. It's just, here's a bunch of points salad at the end, so if you thought you were out of it, you still have a chance. It really bothers me in a game that's so strategic that you can have brilliant moves on players where you use a wonder to go again and take a card they wanted, and the card you took from them, there's all this stuff. And I've had games where, not just that I've lost, but I've had games where I've won because I've gotten the right guild cards. Basically what the guild cards do is they'll give you scoring based on something, blue cards you have or military you have. but for either player's city. So you can score on their city. So I have won a game on getting a couple good guild cards. The whole game I was losing, and I just kind of lucked out and thought, cool. Well, I won. So it really bothers me. It bothers me when I lose that way. I don't feel that good about when I win that way. So I actually just don't play with them. If you're like me and you feel like that bit of randomness is kind of frustrating and the game is so strategic, I just leave them out. There's actually enough cards in the last age to play without them, so I just don't include them. The other thing I mentioned earlier about the first player disadvantage, I actually kind of correct that by giving the first player a couple fewer coins. I'm not as sold on that tactic. I've done it several times. I'm not unhappy with it. If anything, it might give the first player a slight disadvantage instead of I feel like a sizable advantage. So I'm not as convinced on that one, but I'm pretty happy playing the game without guild cards typically. Okay, so do I think you should buy it? First of all, in case I didn't make it clear earlier, this is a 2-player. It's a duel. 7 Wonders Duel. So if you're wanting to play for solo or for 3 or more players, no, you shouldn't get it. But other than that, it's one of my favorite games of all time. So, of course, I think you should buy it. But now to be a little more specific, if you primarily play games with one other person and you want kind of that game that could become your classic, your game that you play over and over and over again, that the more you play it against one person, the better it gets, it's a really good game for that. I feel like 7 Wonders Duel really brings out the more you play someone, you know what their tactics are, and it can get kind of meta. You can almost sort of bluff sometimes. You don't want them to know you're going for military. You don't want them to know, not that there's any hidden information, but you don't want them to know what your strategy is. So you try to like downplay it, or maybe you don't want them to know you're going for science. You know, there's a lot of this like getting to know your opponent and how they're playing this round and how they played last round. So it's a great game for that like one other person kind of situation. It also has a lot of layers to the strategies I kind of indicated already. I played 10 rounds of it, felt like I was really good at the game, but me after 30 rounds would have destroyed me after 10 rounds because, well, especially me after 5 rounds, maybe 10 rounds as well, because it just has so many layers. The strategy can get so deep with, well, I really should get these 3 extra coins now because this is this many victory points. There's just a lot of depth there. So it's a good game to have around if you want to teach someone who's a gamer or maybe someone who's interested, who's played some of these games. It's just a good game you can get into. It seems pretty light. It's not too complicated when you first jump into it, but it has that depth as well. Someone is a gamer and they want something with more thinking. Now that being said, it's not heavy. It's not going to have the epicness or the grand scale of, a big game you pull out where someone who wants really to have an epic kind of experience with all these pieces. It's not going to be that. It's not going to wow you with all the components, but it is a good medium weight, good strategy game. Really, I think basically everyone could love this game. The only people I kind of caution against is if you've never played a modern kind of hobby board game and you're worried about the complexity. I mean, I wouldn't say it's light. It's somewhere in between light and medium complexity. It's not difficult, but it's also not, near as simple as a classic roll move game. So I noticed some things, some mechanisms like the resources can be a little confusing. There are a few things, how much you get when you discard a card, how much money you get, end game scores. Some of those things can be new ideas for people who aren't used to them. So that's really the only people I'd say be a little careful. Just make sure you're okay with, if you haven't played a game, has some complexity, it could be a little bit of a learning curve there at the beginning. Alright, that's my review on 7 Wonders Duel, one of my favorite games of all time. Let me know what you think about it, or if you have any questions about what I said or things about the review, feel free to ask in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, of course, hit like. Also, subscribe to the channel, see more reviews like this, and also some playthroughs.